The Environment Secretary, Steve Reid, joins us now from Westminster. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning. The leader of your party, now the Prime Minister, ran for leadership of Labour, saying that the water industry should be taken back into public hands, renationalised. Why isn't that the answer now, 4 years later?
Well, you see the state that the economy is in, and frankly, it would cost tens of billions of pounds to nationalise the water sector. And if we were to decide to spend that amount of public money, which we won't, it would also take years to unravel the current ownership model. And during those years, investment would dry up and water pollution would get worse. And I think the public expect their government to get on and clean up the waterways, not make the situation even more difficult.
England and Wales, the only countries to have fully privatised the infrastructure of water. It happened under Margaret Thatcher's government, not a government I imagine you are ideologically aligned to. In what way is privatising water, in what way is that working? And I'll give you a couple of examples in the way that people will understand it's not. Privatised water companies in England have accumulated £68 billion in debt. Water companies asking to hike consumer bills by even more than originally requested. The average bill is going to go up by 40% by 2030. And raw sewage has been pumped into our rivers and coastal waters more than 300,000 times, especially illegal discharges from treatment plants, all at the same time that bonuses for water company bosses rose to £9 million this year. Who's this working for, continued privatisation?
Well, I absolutely agree with all of those criticisms. They're criticisms I was making during the election and they're criticisms I'm making since. It's why I've introduced into Parliament something called the Water Special Measures Bill, going through Parliament now, that will ban the payment of multi-million-pound bonuses to water bosses who are overseeing catastrophic failure, and will even make them face criminal liability for persistent law-breaking. Those are the toughest measures ever taken against the water companies. But we need to reset the sector so it works for customers and for the environment in a way that it simply hasn't to date, particularly under the 14 years of the Conservatives. Now, the problems are failures of regulation and governance, not ownership. And the reason I say that is we saw in the Olympic Games the sewage that was in the River Seine in Paris. They have a state-owned water company. Scotland has a state-owned water company. They have the same problems with sewage. So it's not ownership, it's regulation and governance that we need to beef up. So what I'm doing is I've asked Sir John Cunliffe, who is a former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, understands investment, understands regulation. He will be leading this root and branch review of the water sector in this high-powered commission that will be looking at how we reset the sector so that we can bring in the investment that we need to stop the massive bill hikes that are happening at the tail end of the failures of the Conservative government, and make the water sector work for the public.
Can I just establish then, if it's not ownership, why did Keir Starmer back nationalising the water industry?
Well, the economy was in a very different situation then. As circumstances change, you have to change your approach.
You said that ownership doesn't matter.
Well, I just said as well, the economy is in a far worse state today. We've got a £22 billion black hole. We can't be shoveling even more money into that black hole. We have to be plugging it. That's what my colleague Rachel Reeves will be focused on doing as we fix the foundations of the economy in the budget next week.
So is the issue that we can't afford to renationalise the water industry?
Well, it's not just that. I also think it will take too long.
Or is the issue that you don't think we should renationalise the water industry and it wouldn't actually work better?
Well, I'm more interested in the purity of our water than the purity of our ideology. So what I'm going to focus on doing is getting the water cleaned up as quickly as possible.
Which ownership is going to work for the purity of our water? And Keir Starmer used to think it was public ownership.
This is why I've asked Sir John Cunliffe, who is a very senior figure from the world of finance and regulation, to lead this commission that will look at what needs to change in the long term. I've already incidentally taken action since the election to try and sort these things out. I talked about the special measures bill that will ban unfair bonuses going through Parliament now, but I also had the water company chief execs in my office 7 days after the general election, and I got them to agree to ring fence money intended for investment in broken infrastructure rather than diverting it into payment for bonuses and dividends, which is not what the public wants to see. So already taken action, but there's more to do because we need to reset this entire sector. And it's not just pollution, huge problem though that is. We don't have the water infrastructure we need to build the homes across the country that people want to see. As things stand, by the mid-2030s, we will start to run out of drinking water because in that decade, supply will not keep up with demand. Now, I don't want to get into the position of some Mediterranean countries where water is rationed. We absolutely won't go there. This commission will look at how we get a water sector that works for consumers and the environment.
All right, you've made that clear. You talk about purity. We were talking here about tainted water. I'm just wondering, as many are, if your relationship with the water industry has been a bit tainted by the shadow of freebie gate, because the records show that you took nearly £2,000 worth of free soccer tickets from the parent company of a water company that's one of the three biggest companies that Ofwat, the regulator, has said is simply not fit for purpose. You accepted nearly £2,000 of tickets from their parent company. Would you do that again?
Well, first of all, it isn't true. I was offered those tickets by a telecoms company.
I'll name the companies if you like. I can go through the companies if you want.
It was a telecoms company called Three. They're not a water company, they're a telecoms company. It was declared openly and transparently. And if your inference is that by taking tickets from a telecoms company, it's weakened my resolve on water, well, just look at my record. I had them in my office 7 days after the election. I got the toughest action that any Secretary of State has ever taken against the water companies going through right now, making them face personal criminal liability and banning their bonuses. Yes. And I'm launching a commission today to reset the sector entirely. So your inference, as long as your facts, I'm afraid, are wrong.
Well, we won't belabour the inference. I was simply opening it up for you to comment on that. But if you want the facts, it was the invitation of Hutchinson 3G UK Limited, which is ultimately wholly owned by CK Hutchinson Holdings, and they own 75% of Chin Kong Infrastructure Holdings, which owns Northumbrian Water. So I'm sorry, but you did take the tickets from the parent company. That is factually correct,
no,
and not, as you've alleged, factually
company.
Incorrect. It's correct.
Telecoms company.
Well, if you want to hold that position, that's of course entirely.
It's true. That's why I'm holding it.
All right. Can we move on? What do you think of what possibly the next president of the United States, Mr. Trump, and his party have done in the last 24 hours? They've basically issued a writ against Labour, essentially the government, for planning to send 100 staffers across to America to campaign for Kamala Harris. Is that wise?
Labour's not sending any staffers across to the United States. There are a group of individuals, some would be staff, some are former staff, some are supporters, who are using their own time and their own money to go and campaign in elections in the United States. That's not unusual. It's up to people to use their own time and money as they see fit, and it happens in both directions. I've seen people from America campaigning in our election for all parties in the UK as well. So nothing improper about this. Up to people to choose what they do with their own time. It wasn't organised or funded by the Labour Party in any way.
So you telling ex-president, possibly future President Trump, that he's got his facts wrong?
I'm afraid if he believes that to be the case, then unfortunately he has on this case got his facts wrong, and it's also not unlike him to use colourful language. I mean, the key point here is whoever the American people elect as president next month, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, the UK government will have a very close relationship with them because of the special relationship that has existed for decades between the UK and the US. That will survive whoever the American people elect as their president.
You say it's a purely private expedition by 100 Labour staffers, but actually we've seen the correspondence which says that the Labour Party, are going to help them arrange accommodation once they get to America. Not to pay for it, but to arrange for it. OK, even accepting at face value your defence of this, would it not have been wise, possibly, for the Prime Minister to say to these 100 staffers, would you mind not going just at the moment? Because I'm going to have to deal with this guy, possibly, in a month or so's time.
Well, it's up to people to do with their own free time and their own money what they want to do. As I said, it's not organised by the Labour Party. They're not all Labour Party staffers. Some of them would be supporters, and they can do with their own free time what they want. The Labour Party hasn't organised this, and it's not for the Labour Party to tell people what they can and can't do with their holiday time from work. It's up to them. It happens both ways round. I've met Americans campaigning in our election. It's not illegal here, it's not illegal there, and it's also not organised by the Labour Party.
And that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for your time this morning.